Picture a man who could turn heads just by walking into a room. Expensive cashmere coat draped over his shoulders, confidence radiating like heat. This was John Gotti, the king of New York's underworld, long before his empire came crashing down. Born in the gritty streets of the South Bronx in 1940, John Gotti was no ordinary kid. The fifth of 13 children in a struggling immigrant family, he learned early that survival meant staying sharp and staying tough. His father, a day laborer constantly chasing work, moved the family from neighborhood to neighborhood until they finally settled in Brooklyn's East New York, a concrete jungle where only the strongest survived. East New York wasn't just a neighborhood. It was a battleground where youth gangs fought for every inch of territory. And young John? He wasn't just another face in the crowd. With lightning-fast hands and a street-smart attitude, he quickly rose to lead the Fulton Rockaway Boys. The local mobsters weren't just shadows, they were mentors, and the neighborhood shopfronts were their classroom. Carmine Fatico's underground club became Gotti's first real taste of organized crime. He wasn't a model student. In fact, he dropped out of Franklin K. Lane High School at 16, already building a rap sheet that would make most people nervous. Petty crimes, street fights, car thefts. Gotti was collecting rap sheets like others collected baseball cards. His big break came through connections. Meeting Aniello Delacroce, a key figure in the Gambino crime family, Gotti wasn't just another wannabe. He was a rising star. His first major move? A cargo theft operation near Kennedy International Airport that landed him in prison. But even behind bars, Gotti was playing chess while others were playing checkers. When he emerged in 1972, the game had changed. The Bergen Hunt and Fish Club became his new headquarters, a legitimate front for an illegitimate business. Fate dealt him a critical hand in 1974 when he was tasked with avenging a family-related kidnapping and murder. The result? A calculated hit that solidified his reputation. The 1980s were Gotti's golden era. He navigated federal investigations like a skilled captain, beating charges that would have sunk lesser men. His 1986 federal trial became legendary, an absolute embarrassment for law enforcement when he was acquitted on all racketeering charges. Some whispered about jury tampering, but Gotti just smiled and walked free. By the mid-1980s, Gotti wasn't just a mobster. He was a phenomenon. The Gambino family was a $500 million enterprise, with Gotti at its helm. The Ray Night Social Club in Little Italy became his throne room, where top-tier mobsters were forced to report to him. But behind the swagger was a man of profound complexity. The tragic death of his 12-year-old son, Frank, in 1980 revealed a vulnerability beneath the tough exterior, a father's grief that even his criminal lifestyle couldn't shield him from. Despite incriminating surveillance tapes from the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club and the testimony of an insider, Gotti managed to escape conviction. Suspicion of jury tampering loomed large when a New York City police officer was arrested and convicted for feeding the Gambino family the names and addresses of potential jurors. However, no formal charges for tampering ever materialized. The FBI stepped up their game, embedding hidden microphones in an apartment above the Rave Night Social Club, Gotti's meeting hub. The recordings painted a damning picture of Gotti, his underboss Sammy, the Bull Gravano, and Consigliere Frank Lacasio. Captured discussions implicated them in a slew of crimes, from murder to bribery, loan sharking, gambling, and obstruction of justice. During the 1990 trial, snippets of these conversations were revealed, exposing Gotti's operations and tightening the noose around him. But it wasn't just the legal system that saw Gotti as a legend. In a 1997 prison conversation with his brother, Peter, Gotti reflected on his infamous legacy. He joked, "Pete, they hate me because I became a legend," pointing to a claim that over 50 books mentioned his name. "You won't even find 53 books on Abraham Lincoln," Gotti quipped, with his characteristic bravado. In December 1990, Gotti and his closest associates were arrested at the Rave Night Social Club. This time, the government had a trump card: Sammy Gravano, who had turned state witness. Gravano's testimony sealed Gotti's fate, and on April 2, 1992, a federal jury found him guilty on all 13 charges, including 5 murders, racketeering, and other crimes. As the verdict was read, Gotti sat unfazed, arms folded and smirking. He declined to address the court before receiving a life sentence without parole. Gravano, who cooperated with authorities, received a reduced 5-year sentence. Stripped of his power and prestige, Gotti was sent to the Supermax Federal Penitentiary in Marion, Illinois. Far from his opulent lifestyle in New York, Gotti now endured solitary confinement, spending 23 hours a day in a 7 by 8-foot cell. The facility's harsh conditions allowed inmates just an hour of exercise, often while shackled. Family visits were prohibited, and even phone calls to loved ones were out of reach. But inside Marion, Gotti remained a figure of respect, even admiration. Other inmates sought his approval, offering favors and trying to curry his favor. However, this respect wasn't universal. Walter Johnson, a volatile and physically imposing inmate, clashed with Gotti. During a heated encounter in a hallway, Gotti allegedly insulted Johnson, sparking a physical altercation. Johnson emerged victorious, leaving Gotti bruised and bloodied. When questioned, Gotti downplayed the fight, claiming he had simply slipped and fallen. The harsh conditions at Marion extended beyond the inmates. Reports described the facility as inhumane, with unsanitary water supplies contributing to illnesses among prisoners. Gotti himself eventually developed head, neck, and throat cancer. Despite his deteriorating health, medical care was sparse, and rumors swirled that the warden held a personal grudge against Gotti, intensifying his suffering. On June 10, 2002, John Gotti died at the Federal Medical Center in Springfield, Missouri, after a prolonged battle with cancer. At 61 years old, the man who once ruled the streets of New York left behind a complicated legacy, a tale of power, loyalty, and ultimate downfall. John Gotti, once the feared and flashy Teflon Don, spent his final days far from the lavish lifestyle that had defined him. He was discovered lifeless in a small prison cell, confined behind 2 heavy steel doors. His last moments were a grim contrast to his once outspoken nature, his voice silenced by a medically induced coma. Tubes provided his only nourishment, and even a tracheotomy was performed to clear his airway, blocked by 8 tumors in his neck. For the man who once commanded the streets of New York, death arrived quietly. The Bureau of Prisons announced plans to perform an autopsy to confirm the exact cause of death, igniting a swift backlash from Gotti's family. His longtime attorney, Bruce Cutler, passionately objected, stating, "There's no need for it. We know what killed him, but you'll also find 10 lions' hearts in there." Gotti's relatives argued that years of medical neglect at the Marion Supermax prison contributed to his cancer, citing recurring infections in his dental implants. The news of Gotti's death sparked chaos within both law enforcement and the underworld. The NYPD scrambled to prepare for a heavily attended funeral, wary of what his passing might mean for the leadership of the Gambino crime family. Meanwhile, Gotti's supporters lashed out at federal authorities for notifying the public before informing his family. "It's disgraceful," fumed one insider who learned the news from a reporter. Gotti's struggle with cancer became public knowledge in 1998, when doctors predicted he had only 6 months to live. Despite undergoing a radical surgery that left a prominent scar beneath his jaw, the mob boss defied expectations, surviving for over 4 years. His resilience in the face of such grim odds mirrored his lifelong refusal to go down without a fight. For over a decade, Gotti endured solitary confinement at Marion, an unprecedented punishment in modern U.S. prison history. Civil libertarians occasionally rallied to his defense, questioning the ethics of his treatment. Even Amnesty International sought an interview with him, though Gotti declined. In his final days, confined to a coma-like state and heavily medicated, his son Peter sat by his side, speaking to him as a video camera recorded the one-sided conversations. True to his nature, Gotti never filed complaints or lawsuits to protest the harsh prison conditions. Yet, despite his deteriorating health, Gotti continued to shock those around him. He looked older, but he had a bounce to his step, remarked a close friend, Rebach. "After all I read about his condition, it was shocking to see how well he appeared." For Gotti, whose life had been defined by dominance and opulence, this quiet end in prison was a stark reminder of how power can fade. John Gotti's death marked the end of an era, but his legacy continues to cast a long shadow. How did the Gambino family navigate the power vacuum left in his wake? And what does Gotti's rise and fall teach us about the consequences of living outside the law? Stay tuned for our next episode as we uncover more secrets of the Mafia world. And don't forget to share your thoughts. What do you think was John Gotti's greatest strength, and what ultimately led to his downfall? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure you subscribe for more untold stories of Mafia legends.